every night, ever since she'd left him, he'd fall asleep in a different spot. On the sofa, in an armchair in the living room, on a mat on the balcony, like some homeless bum. And every morning, he made a point of going out for breakfast. I mean, even prisoners get a daily walk in the yard, don't they? Well, at the cafe, he always sat him at a table set for two. And, most importantly, sat him across from an empty chair. Always. Even if the waiter specifically asked if he was alone. Other people would sit there in twos or threes, laughing, tasting each other's food, fighting over the check, while Miran sat by himself eating his healthy start. Orange juice, muesli with honey, decaf double espresso with warm low-fat milk on the side. Of course, it would have been nice if there were someone sitting across from him at the table. If there were someone to argue with over the check as they both struggled to pay, handing over the money to the waitress, saying, "Don't take it from him. Please put it back. This one's on me." But he didn't really have anyone to do that with. And breakfast alone in a cafe was 100 times better than staying at home. Have you ever wanted to be, or pretended to be, someone else? Have you ever had that need for escapism? Well, if his girlfriend leaves him, Miran feels a certain emptiness inside. But in the unlikely location of a cafe in the middle of Tel Aviv, he finds a truly remarkable solution that allows him to start his day with A Healthy Start by Etgar. Keret. Then, one Thursday, a fat, sweaty guy walked into the cafe and smiled at him. Miran was caught off guard. The last person to give him a smile was Mayan, just before she left him 5 months earlier. And her smile had been unmistakably sarcastic. Whereas this one was soft, almost apologetic. The fat guy gestured something, apparently a signal that he'd like to sit down, and Miran nodded, almost without thinking. The fat guy took a seat. "Reuben! I'm sorry I'm late. I know we said 10, but I had a nightmare morning with the kid." It crossed Miran's mind that maybe he ought to tell the fat guy that he wasn't Reuben. But he found himself checking his watch instead and saying, "What's 10 minutes? Forget it." Then neither of them spoke for a second, and Miran asked if the kid was okay. And the fat guy said she was. It was just that she'd started a new kindergarten, and every time he brought her there, she had a hard time letting go. But enough about that. You've got enough on your plate without hearing about my problems. Let's get down to business. Miran took a deep breath and waited. "Look, 500 is too high. Give it to me for 400. You know what? 410 even. And I'm good for 600 pieces. 480. 480. And that is only if you're good for 1,000. You gotta understand, the market's in the shitter, what with the recession and all. I mean, just last night in the news, they showed people eating out of garbage cans. If you keep pushing, I'll have to sell high. You're pricing me right out of the market. Don't worry. For every 3 people eating out of garbage cans, there's 1 driving a Mercedes. They told me you were tough. I'm just like you. trying to keep body and soul together. Then the fat guy wiped his sweaty paw on his shirt and held it out. 460. 460, and I take 1,000. When he saw Miran wasn't reacting, he added, 460, I take 1,000, and I owe you a favor. And you know better than anyone, Reuben, that in our business, favors are worth a lot more than money. That last sentence was all Miran needed to take the outstretched hand and shake it. For the first time in his life, somebody owed him a favor. Someone who thought his name was Reuben, but still. And when they'd finished eating, as they argued over who would pick up the tab, a warm feeling spread through Miran's stomach. He beat the fat guy to it by 1/10 of a second, shoving the crumpled bill into the waitress' hand. And from that day on, it became practically standard procedure. Miran would take a seat, give his order, and keep a lookout for any new person who walked into the cafe. And if that person began eyeing the tables with an expectant look, Miran would quickly wave and invite him or her to join him. I don't want this to end up in court, said a bald guy with thick eyebrows. Me neither. It's always better to sell things amicably, Miran conceded. Gabi asked me to tell you he's sorry, said a guy with rotting teeth and an earring. If he really was sorry, he should have come here and told me himself. No middlemen, Miran countered. In your email, you sounded taller, a skinny redhead complained. In your email, you sounded less picky, Miran snapped. And somehow, everything worked out in the end. He and Baldy settled out of court. Rotting Teeth promised Gabi would phone, and Miran and the redhead agreed that they weren't quite right for each other. Sometimes they picked up the tab. Sometimes he did. With the redhead, they split the bill. And it was all so fascinating that if an entire morning went by when no one sat across from him at the table, Miran felt let down. Luckily, this didn't happen too often. Almost 2 months had passed since the meeting with the sweaty fat guy when a man with a pock-marked face walked in. Despite his skin and the fact that he looked at least 10 years older than Miran, he was good-looking, with loads of charisma. The first thing he said as he sat down was, I was sure you wouldn't show, but we agreed to meet. Listen, I'm sorry the way I yelled at you on the phone. Really, I just lost it. But I meant every word I said. You got that? I'm asking you to stop seeing her. But I love her! Listen, sometimes you can love something and you still have to give it up. Take it from someone a little older than you. Sorry, but I can't. Yes, you can. Can and you will. Maybe we both love her, but I happen to be her husband. And I am not going to let you break up my family. Miran shook his head. You have no idea what my life has been like this past year. Hell. Not even hell. Just one great big stale chunk of nothing. And when you've been living with nothing for so long and suddenly something turns up, you can't just tell it to go away. You understand me, don't you? I know you understand. If you see her one more time, I'll kill you. I'm not kidding. And you know it. So kill me. That doesn't scare me. We're all gonna die in the end. husband leaned across the table and sucked Miran in the jaw. It was the first time in Ron's life that anyone had hit him so hard. He felt a hot wave of pain surge up somewhere in the middle of his face and spread in every direction. Seconds later, he fell himself on the floor, the husband standing over him. "I'll take her away from here!" The husband kept on shouting as he went on, kicking Miran in the stomach and ribs. "I'll take her far away to another country, and you wouldn't know where she is! You'll never see her again! You'll never see her again! You got that?" Then two waiters jumped on the husband and managed somehow to yank him away. Somebody yelled to the barman to call the police. With his cheeks still glued to the coolness of the floor, Ron watched as the husband bolted out of the cafe. A waiter bent over and asked him if he was okay, and Miran made an attempt to answer. "Do you want me to call an ambulance?" Miran whispered that he didn't. "Are you sure?" "You're bleeding." Miran just nodded slowly and shut his eyes. He tried as hard as he could to imagine himself with that woman. The one he'd never see again. Tried, and for a moment, he almost succeeded. His whole body ached. He felt alive.